Look at that.
Hey, all right. So I believe, internet world, that we are alive and working here. So I am Tom Heck, with my position is the Vice President for Education Initiatives, and I am here with my colleague Liam Nilsson. Say hi, Liam.
Hey everybody, my name is Liam. I am the community manager at Joy Labs / Makey Makey, and here to my left is
Lucas.
Hi. So I'm Lucas Steuber. I'm the CEO of a little company here in Oregon called LanguageCraft. I'm a speech-language pathologist, and then I also am the director of clinical R&D for a company called Avaz, which is an augmentative communication development company. And some other stuff too, but our little hangout things aren't working, so it doesn't have all the titles. Oh.
Here's what we're hoping today is that we're going to begin to explore how to use the Makey Makey in ways that are unique and different, and in that light, that's why we invited Lucas on. And Lucas this is part of a series of interviews that we're doing around what we're calling the Jedi, Makey Makey Jedis. Or did I have that right, Liam? Are we calling it Jedi Makey Makey Jedi leaders? Man, we want to include some kind of Star Wars.
Tom, you made this up. It's like Makey Makey educator Jedis. Jedi educator. I think we totally smoothed that out yet.
There we go. We're going to get, it'll only probably take us 10 or 20 of these to really get wired. So I want to, Lucas introduced himself, but I met Lucas from, 2 years ago it's been, even though we're on different sides of the continent here. I met Lucas when I was working on the project that I spoke about a year ago on a TEDx stage, where I had gone into a classroom of elementary school students who had severe and profound physical and cognitive disabilities, and I had high school students designing and building assistive technology devices for these same elementary school kids to interact with computers. And when I was working on that project, Lucas was so kind and generous to ideas off of him, and so I have since learned that Lucas is doing amazing work, and for me, I see it as amazing in regards to using the Makey Makey to make a real impact in the lives of real people. I mean, it's kind of fun to make a banana piano, and but I think you're going to hear some ideas today that Lucas is going to share, where we've moved beyond the banana piano into designing solutions for people that are making a real difference in their lives. So, Lucas, I do want to, let's start here just so you can kind of give us some background of who you are. You've got a lot of letters after your name, and I'm just going to read them here. MSCCC/SLP, MA-T. All right, break it down for us. What do those stand for?
Yeah, I'm hoping I can get some more and eventually spell something. I'm not sure what it would be exactly. Or like at the carnival, if you can, when you get 2 medium prizes and trade them in for 1 big prize, maybe I can get a PhD out of all that.
I like it.
So my background actually is as an applied linguist. So I did an undergraduate degree where I focused on applied linguistics as well as computer science initially, although I didn't finish the computer science part, ironically enough. And then I also got a master's degree in applied linguistics where I studied schizophrenia and some of the language disorders that happen with schizophrenia. So that sort of led me into a clinical route, and I decided to become a speech-language pathologist, which is a very sort of long term that just means essentially speech therapist, someone who helps people to communicate. And my area of specific work is in the area of augmentative and alternative communication, which could be broadly thought of as any non-speech form of communication. I'm sure that you two are familiar, but for anyone who's out there listening, anything from sign language to picture exchange systems that are used in schools for kids that are nonverbal, all the way up to high-tech, sophisticated augmentative communication devices like Stephen Hawking is probably the biggest pop example of that. So this is a field that I've been in between linguistics and speech pathology for quite a while now. 8, 10 years, something like that. So actually, I guess that makes me a youngin in a lot of ways with this. But assistive technology is definitely my passion, and I guess that explains all the letters, I hope.
All right, so and there's another area that you're involved in that I think we're going to be really talking about today, and this idea of hackcess, sort of a play on hacking and access. Tell us a little bit about that world, and my caveat is that I have a degree in education, and I'm involved in the maker movement and tinkering. Many people know, even if they're not involved with the maker movement, understand tinkering. And but then you start to use the word hacking, which for some people is positive, and some people has gotten a negative connotation. And yet there's in your world, from what I understand, a lot of the kids that you work with, and it's mostly kids, right? It's not adults as so much.
Right.
Yeah, so it's but kids and adults who have some kind of disability that they're living with. Oftentimes, finding a way to change a store-bought item so that it's easier to use for somebody with a disability. Is this the idea of hackcess or hacking and access?
Right, you've got it. So, and you're spot on with what you said about the term hacking still having, mixed connotations in the public. But for me, what hacking means really is just repurposing. Finding a different use for something than what it was originally intended. And so I started a group called hackcess that is mostly comprised of other speech pathologists, occupational therapists. We have a brilliant OT here in Portland named Pete Carpenter, who's a member, SLP named Rachel Moore. We've got probably 60 people involved in this group. And it's all about finding creative solutions to questions of access. We're on the cusp, or perhaps in the middle of, a potential revolution in terms of what can be done in low-cost assistive technology, largely because of the ubiquity of things like Makey Makey or even iOS and Android. So now things like even a simple switch to activate something for somebody who has a profound motor impairment. Those things can cost as much as $180 to $300. Augmented communication devices could cost upwards of $25,000 to $30,000, depending on how sophisticated they are. Whereas now I can build an eye gaze tracking communication device for $1,000. I can build a switch using Makey Makey for $50. So it really it's opened up whole new. It's opened up whole new avenues for, especially families. Like you said, I work mostly in pediatrics, but families that maybe either can't afford the really high-end solutions, or who, when you're talking about the life of a child, right, who has a profound impairment of some sort, waiting 6 months for insurance to give you a yes, I mean, that's a pretty substantial fraction of someone's life for many of these kids. And if I can walk in tomorrow and build something, that's a net win for everybody. So
yeah,
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say that in my limited experience, and truly it is very limited to that one experience of bringing high school students in, from the general population, and to work with this severe and profound classroom. First I was intimidated because I had never worked with this population, and then seeing one of the most memorable pieces for me is the teacher, the special ed teacher, who showed me a laundry basket, a plastic, laundry basket that you get at the store, and it was filled with broken assistive technology devices.
Oh yeah.
And she had one that you probably know. She called it a Big Mac.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, it's like this many people know the Staples button that says, you know, that was easy. It may be twice as big as that. You're looking for one.
Version. I know I've got Big Macs around here, but I know.
Yeah. So she had showed me a catalog where she had been paying like $150 for a button. You know, just a regular button. Well, I call it a regular button. But it's used for a very specific purpose. And when she saw the Makey Makey and what you could, you know, a button you could make yourself. So I'm wondering if you can talk about this whole, you know, the store-bought solutions versus the do-it-yourself solutions. Why is that important to you, and how do children react to it, and how do parents react to it?
Okay, so we have a little bit of time, right? Because I'm probably going to talk. So jump in and interrupt me at any point. Okay, so just as an example, so as a speech pathologist, when I go see, I see a lot of kids in home because a lot of them, the children I work with are difficult to transport, for example. It used to be that I would have multiple duffel bags with me, and I mean big duffel bags of equipment to trial when I would first meet a student, to the point that just anecdotally a couple years ago I was actually walking into a high school for the first time and I was stopped by security because I had too many black duffel bags hanging from me, and they were like, okay, what's going on with this guy? And that was because I needed all those different things. So you made reference to the Big Mac switch, which is probably the most popular and well known. It's a very large switch. It can be used to pre-record messages, or also to, you know, it can be used to initiate toys like a fan to blow, things like this. So it's used often to work on cause and effect with kids, and also as a very basic communication device. So, for example, mom or dad the night before can record, you know, today we watched Star Wars, and then they're able to share that the next morning at circle time or whatever it is in the classroom. So I can bring now, instead of having to have a Big Mac and a whole bunch of other sizes and maybe, you know, a field of 6 that I could try to see if they're able to do that, I just bring, you know, a couple Makey Makeys and a bunch of Play-Doh, or even better, something else conductive. So like we have, I try to keep up on all the recent kids movies, and I'll go buy the stuffed animals from whatever's going on, and literally just sort of stuff them with steel wool and set it up that way. Because of course a kid is going to be more motivated to touch Olaf, right, from Frozen than he's going to be, or she's going to be, to touch this big red antiseptic sort of switch that looks like everybody else's in the classroom. So, you know, Play-Doh's a perfect example of this too, because I can turn it into whatever, you know, whatever I need it to be at the moment, and that's always fun for kids. So,
well, all right. So how, break it down for us. When you say that you're making a switch or a button, you know, it's like I'm getting ready to lead, and let me grab a switch here. So I'm getting ready to lead a workshop in Washington, D.C. next week. And one of the pieces in the Makey Makey invention literacy workshops, one of the things that we're going to do is have all the participants build a switch. So you know, we all hear about switches. It's like you hear a light switch on the wall, right. And you know, this is a little switch here that I built. It's just foam, and if I take it apart, really what's here is like
aluminum tape, or is that
aluminum? Yeah, aluminum tape and cardboard. And then I had to keep those two pieces apart. I had this little piece of foam. Actually, I had 2 pieces rather, and then I put a rubber band around it. But for those of us here working in the Makey Makey arena, you know, many of us understand switches in a different way. You know, we think, oh, the banana piano is essentially a switch.
Right.
I'm the human that's acting as the switch. But for you, switches, I guess what I'm getting at is that I want you to kind of share the importance of a switch relative to your work. Because for kids, switches can mean the difference between being able to communicate and not.
Right. Perfect. Exactly. So, you know, for us, a switch is, you know, a friend of mine, Sammy Raymond, made a comment to me recently where he said that assistive technology, or technology, makes things convenient for us and it makes things possible for people with disabilities. And I really like the way he put that, because I think that's very true. You know, for me, getting up and turning off a light switch is no problem, or, you know, the concept of a switch, I mean, it's just anything that causes cause and effect. But if you have a student, say, you know, a young woman with Rett syndrome, which results in sort of a unique form of paralysis, it's literally the gateway to the world, right? You might have one switch that we're able to mount, like perhaps, you know, between her knees, so that she has that one means of communication, which is traditionally what we've done is use switches for communication. But you also think about, you know, I'm thinking of a 17-year-old girl in particular. A 17-year-old girl who's typically developing is able to slam the door on their parents and make a mess of their room and all this. Whereas with a child with a disability, when we have any sort of behavior, then it's like, oh gosh, oh no, there's, you know, we need a plan to fix this, you know. And so I've also used switches as ways to sort of break this fourth wall and give them better access to their environment. So I use drones, Sphero robots, things like that, and I've been able to configure it so that kids with motor impairments can activate a switch and send a robot flying at a Lego city that some of the other kids made and blow it up. Just, you know, because they've never been able to do anything like that before. And that's fun for everyone, because then I can have the neurotypical peers sort of program the Makey Makey, program the robot, build the city, you know, all in service of this really fun activity for a student.
Huh. So when you go about tell us, give us an example of a real life switch that you made, an application of the Makey Makey, and on your website you. Or I know that you talked to, or was it on your website, or I'm reading this, is about the student who was waking up in the middle of the night, the young person, and you used a Makey Makey to help solve a problem, to help the student navigate in the middle of the night.
Right. So this is a student with a very low incidence genetic disorder called Huntington's disease, which is very unusual to manifest before the age of 40. He happens to be very young. And this was several years ago now, but what we found is that during the night he was sort of getting up and wandering, which is very common in dementia. If anybody's had an older family member, for example, and really what he was trying to do was find the restroom, but he would get lost in the house, and then we'd sort of have accidents and things like this. So people were really puzzling about these complicated plans to fix this, and they even had talked to a security company and got this quote of thousands of dollars to have cameras and all this. Again, this a few years ago. I just used a Makey Makey and set it up so that when he opened the door to his bedroom, the Christmas lights would lead his way to the bathroom. And then when he closed it, when he got back, the lights would turn off. I think, what did that cost me? $60, something like that, and it ended up being a perfect solution for him. So that's one example of something really basic that can be done and that could apply to a lot of the pediatric and geriatric populations that I work with.
And tell the implementation of that solution. What was that like? For how long? Like from the moment you walked in to and learned what was going on to actually putting that solution in place. Are we talking weeks?
No. I mean, the first version I built of that probably took me a half an hour, just because I have all this stuff with me, and so it was just a matter of, and so those of you who are familiar with Makey Makey, obviously out there in the world, and the way that it works, the way that I did that initially was by using conductive tape, aluminum tape, on the bottom of his door, and then having it sort of connect with a mat that was also conductive once it was open to a certain width. So that was the really simple sort of hack solution, and then a few weeks later I returned and made it a little bit more permanent, so it wasn't getting torn up as much. But that's, often that's part of the process, right? Is you can use tools like Makey Makey to explore what's possible, and then learn that, okay, well, now that we know that this works, now I can invest the time to build something bigger and more permanent. Like I know, Tom, we've talked before about a big floor piano that I built once for a self-contained, so quote-unquote, classroom, and that was a lot of fun because the way that worked was that these students really did not interact with each other socially at all, and so we would ground one student or the teacher, and in order to actually jump around and be able to play on the piano, they would have to hold hands with each other and interact, in order to activate and in order to get the current. And so that's another example. There's things that we can do socially, with Makey Makey with neurodiverse populations that people otherwise probably wouldn't think of.
Huh. The parents, tell me the parents' reaction when you implemented this quick solution. How did they see this as Lucas is a genius, or hey, we could do this?
And then I'm also curious, what kind of computer did you use?
Yeah.
Almost every family I work with has some old computer laying around that I can cannibalize, or we also can provide something. Personally, I always carry around a Mac. I mean, that's just in education, it's hard to avoid using OS X and iOS both. As far as the parents, the reaction most of the time is, oh my gosh, you're a space wizard, right? Like people don't really understand how it works. But after a little bit of explanation, especially with Makey Makey, right? So a traditional Arduino board, like a lot of the ones that are out there, they're kind of intimidating to look at, right? Makey Makey is a lot more accessible, and Makey Makey Go even more so. So it's pretty easy to explain. So the first reaction I often get is what the heck did you just do? That was, how did you do that? And then the second reaction I get often is, why don't other people know how to do this? Why didn't I know about this before, right? And and there's this sort of sentiment which can be really negative towards the assistive technology industry, saying like, how is this company charging $400 for this that you just did, in that much time? But increasingly, I'm finding that there's a lot of parents, especially as sort of my generation is having kids. There's a lot of folks my age that grew up during the computer revolution and really do understand. So that's been nice. And then occasionally, just recently, I actually, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but can I give you one more example?
That's why we wanted you on here, Lucas.
All right,
we're going to tap into your brain today.
I like attention. So one thing that's common with children with autism can be repetitive hand motions like this. We'll call that self-stimming. Another technical term for it would be EchopracSIA, which is just repeating the same motion essentially over and over again. And so I've built this little sort of shaker tube that has a metal ball inside of it, and so when it hits, I can set it up to have a certain cause and effect reaction. Because one thing that we know about this for kids is that they're frequently not aware that they're even doing the motion. And so, recently I set this up with a kid with a preferred movie where every time he would shake, it would pause and then restart the movie on the TV. And at first he's kind of going, what's happening? And then finally he was like, oh, like it was very much an aha moment for him. And
wow,
after
that's brilliant.
It was pretty cool. I'm excited to start doing that more with and you can do that with stuffed animals. You can do it with all kinds of stuff. Again, it's cause and effect training. And so I was speaking to the parents afterwards, and they're like, what was that? And I was like, well, I made a joke. I was like, I electrocuted your son, and that was the wrong thing to say. So don't put it that way, because that has a connotation. But
well, you remind me of oh gosh, maybe a year ago or so, I had a Skype conversation with two special ed teachers and a father whose child these two special ed teachers was serving. And maybe this young man was in first or second grade, but he had an inability to communicate verbally beyond sort of grunts and sort of screaming.
Right.
And he was also in a wheelchair, and he had limited use of his arms. And so using a traditional mouse was sort of out of the question. And all the parents wanted, Lucas, was for this, well, what the young man wanted was to be able to start and stop Netflix on his own.
Right.
And so coming up with a solution for that was, they were looking at buying these store-bought switches, and then it was just turning into an expensive hassle. And so I got on a Skype call with them, and we talked about different things that they could do, and they got to understand how the Makey Makey worked. So they had like one hand that they had covered on his wheelchair with aluminum foil, the hand that is typically stationary, and then they hung like a flag of aluminum foil. And so he started and stopped the Netflix by just swiping at the aluminum flag, right? And they sent me a video clip that I love. He's just sitting here laughing and looking at the video start, because now he's able to do it. Before he was making just getting upset because his parents weren't always there, but just that little bit of control that he now had was making all the difference to him.
Right. And well, and that's too. The schools we think a lot about. I'm hearing my own voice now. I'm like, whoa. It's echoing a little bit. In the schools, there's a certain mandate to think about academics, right? To think about access to curriculum. But there's this whole other component, which is access to activities of daily living, right? Which is really something that every kid should be able to start and stop Netflix, or every adult should be able to do that. And so there's very complicated, complex solutions for that, like eye gaze control or sit puff mice and things like that. But I'll tell you one thing that just came out of the hackcess group is the idea of a butt mouse. Now everyone's going to be watching this and saying, what is this? And it's the idea of using several contact pads with a Makey Makey to create a seat, and you can move the cursor by adjusting your body weight on the pad, and then kind of do a click or a double click that way. And this is something that we're absolutely able to build for ALS and for other things. And it's something I would never have thought of if I hadn't started to talk to other creative educators.
There's a video of somebody who made a chair like that. It was like a STEM office chair. It had some built into it. I'll try to find a video.
Yeah, I was going to say, I haven't seen that. I hope I didn't accidentally, or we didn't accidentally steal an idea.
Sounds like our audio is a little off here, so I hope that for our listeners. By the way, for listeners, I would like to encourage you to write in your question, and Liam is going to help forward questions to us. So this is a great opportunity to connect with Lucas and bounce some ideas off, because there's Lucas, from where I sit, I'm not typically serving the population that you serve. What I would like to see, my dream is the students from the general ed population who are engaged in engineering and design challenges. How many of those students are out there building a robot that's going to compete against another robot? Which is kind of fun, right? It's kind of fun, but it's very different. I can tell you that one of the high school students that I worked with, who had never worked with this population before, with these kids with these challenges, when we got done, and he had built just the simplest of controllers for these kids, he at the end of the experience, and he was a senior, he said that experience was the most profound learning experience he'd had in his entire 4 years of school. So there's a part of me that says, how many of, I was just one little example, here in Asheville, North Carolina. I start to wonder, how many other kids out there, like high school, middle school kids, could be designing solutions for their peers in their community, or, adults. A friend of mine said, well, there's also stroke victims, adult stroke victims who on Monday they can operate a mouse. They have a stroke on Tuesday, Wednesday, there's no way they can use that mouse anymore. And let's see, Lucas's microphone is off. Are you able to? There we go.
Yeah, there we go. All right.
Yeah.
Well, in the last you and I spoke, we had a. I wonder why. Back here, I'm going to turn on the volume. I think that's something that's really brilliant, which I know you guys are starting to do, is to sort of collect and aggregate lesson plans and things like that around these. I mean, schematics, because there's so many brilliant people out there, and there's so many brilliant educators, and then there's so many brilliant kids. And we, in my world of augmented communication, we have evidence that shows that the #1 predictor of success with intervention, with things like a communication device, is training of peers and family and involving the whole circle of support of the individual. So having students design solutions for other students, I mean, not only is that just good education, right? I mean, that's teaching them all the wonderful things that you can do with programming, with Arduino, with Makey Makey, but it's also in service of this larger goal, and it helps to break down, what very often can be a social barrier. between these different sort of types of students. So I think it's a brilliant idea. I think that I know that I mentioned Pete Carpenter from Hackcess a little while ago. He's doing a lot of similar stuff in Portland public schools. And for my part here, I'm starting to think about how to systematize and draw out these different things in a way that educators can replicate. Because as much as Makey Makey has helped, it is, it can still be intimidating for folks to sort of first look at that box and be like, okay, possibilities are endless. That's kind of scary because that's not a discrete, like, this is what you do with this.
Yeah. Well, so talk for a moment about this idea of people who don't have all the letters after your name. Which seems like, you going into a home and creating the solutions makes sense because this is the water you swim in. What about a teacher who doesn't have all the letters that you have and wants to go do this, to have his or her students go out and create solutions? Do you think they should? In other words, the old doctors are asked to, do no harm. Do you think that that harm could be done, or do you think that what happens, in other words, when somebody with no experience working with special populations goes in to work with a child, a high school student working with an elementary school kid, in my case, who's got these special needs? Is there something that we need to be aware of, like when the general ed population goes into these special ed populations?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I mentioned earlier that we're on the cusp or in the middle of this real revolution with assistive technology, but with that potential also comes a great responsibility to do things that are evidence-based, right, and to do things that are actually efficacious. And there's a lot of high-tech companies that sort of push into the special education space without any knowledge of the evidence or the needs, and that can end up being predatory in some cases. But at the same time, you've also got a lot of educators out there who have brilliant ideas but maybe don't have the technical acumen to execute them, right? So, I mean, here's my gut. The only people in my experience that care about all those letters after my name are insurance companies. Those are the ones, because those are the ones that end up deciding to pay me for what I'm doing. As a general rule, like with parents, I don't know if half of the people I work with even would know the term speech-language pathologist. I think that they just sort of see me as the assistive technology guy that comes in. So I mean, I can't really envision a scenario in which harm could be done by a well-meaning individual who's trying to, deploy some assistive technology using Makey Makey. I do think that there's some ways that they could probably waste their time, do things that maybe don't matter, do things that are a distraction. So that's another argument, I think, for what we just spoke to, which is, having some resources available, having some schematics and some lesson plans that are already sort of prepared and ready to go. And I'll put out there for my part, anybody who's watching, please always feel free to contact me, Lucas at LanguageCraft.org. Geez, I need a speech therapist. And I'd be happy to share ideas or to bounce things around.
Cool. Yeah. So tell us about your web address again. How do people get in touch with you?
So my company is called LanguageCraft. We were originally called Language Lab, but it turns out that was copyrighted. So I asked a bunch of kids to name us, and so now we're LanguageCraft, which I think might be because of Minecraft. But anyway, LanguageCraft.org. My name is Lucas. I'm real easy to find on there. And then I also work with the Autism Society of America and a number of other folks. But the best way to contact me would be through LanguageCraft. Awesome.
So. Liam, let us know if there's any questions from the people who are out there listening or watching. But so one of the things, Lucas, that we're doing is we've got some pretty exciting news coming up. In the next couple months, we're launching a more robust community for our educators and all other users who are out there to share ideas, and so that will be happening soon. another thing along the lines of sharing a curriculum for how to approach this design challenge, essentially, where you have high school or middle school students, or probably even fifth graders. I'm convinced fifth graders could do this. But Purdue University's engineering program, EPICS, which stands for Engineering Projects in Community Service.
Yes.
Curriculum developer is writing a whole curriculum that would probably last a semester around this assistive technology piece, and they hope to roll that out and share it in the fall of 2016. So that's pretty exciting. That's going to be, you know, standards-based and tied into the overall EPICS curriculum on a larger scale. So there's movement out there for educators who want to create designs for real people and do sort of what you're doing on a daily basis. When I think about the work that you're doing with the Makey Makey and you know, all the kids who are benefiting from this little simple electronic device, it really is amazing to me and delightful, and I think it shows what's really possible with this little device. Beyond the banana, right?
Beyond the banana, I like that. That should be a book title, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect example of what we talked about at the very beginning of the idea of hacking, right? Of taking the idea of the banana and applying it to a whole different population. And that's fantastic that Purdue's doing that. I'm familiar with EPICS. I think that you and I even together have corresponded a bit with them, and so that's great, because you know, like I said, I do think that having some standards and having some evidence is really important in any realm of education, let alone this. Partially is somebody needs to teach me, I think, better wire management and something around that.
That just tells me that you're busy making stuff.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So I do have a question. You're involved in. You have your hands involved in many different areas when it comes to assistive. I guess it's all assistive technology, but you have an app, for example, right now. It's not necessarily tied to the Makey Makey, but I'm wondering. I just took a look on the video that you have created. Help us understand just briefly what this app does and who it's designed for. Sure. I know it has to do with language.
Sure. So the app that we created is called Free Speech, and it's available for iOS and also for OS X, so both PC, iPhone, iPad. And the idea behind it really is, if you look at a traditional augmentative communication tool, if anyone has seen one of these, you know, it's going to look like a big grid of words, essentially. And one problem historically is that we haven't given kids a lot of help in terms of syntax and morphology and actually learning how language is constructed. So we have a child with autism who's 9 years old who will go to their device and say water want, and we're going to honor that request because we know what they mean. But that means that half of the language that they're hearing in their environment is errored, which is a problem for developmental literacy. And ultimately, for a lot of these kids that maybe for complicated motor reasons or whatever, who aren't going to have language, being able to read and to compose, on like a typing device or something like that, it opens up a whole new world. So our Free Speech was our sort of attempt, or is our attempt, to solve that problem. So rather than being this sort of clinical grid, kids literally pick up and manipulate words like building blocks and just drop them into an arena. And the app will automatically create grammatical sentences based on what they've said, and it'll also prompt and model to help them expand their utterances. So instead of just saying, I want water, now very easily with a few taps and with some prompts, they could say, I'm not thirsty right now, or I'm going to want water tomorrow in class, or much more complicated sentences. So this is an idea that was originally dreamed up by my colleague Ajit, who's the CEO of Avaz. So they're based out of India, and I'm kind of the U.S. Clinical arm of this. But one thing I'll say about it is it's you said it's not exactly Makey Makey, but it's definitely still part of the maker movement. We tried to take an idea that's been out there for a while and completely sort of throw it on its head. So most of these applications for augmentative communication, it used to be $7,000 to $30,000. Some of them still are. The apps on the iPad are usually between $200 and $250. Free speech is $10. So we wanted to make it as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. So that's one example of that. And then you know, the other piece is that it's just fun. It's very kid oriented in the same way as what I talked about touching Olaf to make a communication request. You know, the whole app just sort of feels like a sketchboard. And so anyway, it's a work in progress. Ajit gave a TED talk about it a little bit ago, which I'd encourage folks to Google. It's called A Word Game to Communicate in Any Language. Which is another important part of this, because it really doesn't matter what your starting language is. So you can compose from Spanish into English, soon Chinese into English, and we've been blown away by the response. Apple's actually been very, very wonderful with us, because they've had me come in and talk at pretty much all their stores out here about assistive technology, which is great. I appreciate their commitment to serving that community.
Awesome. Well, quite an here we go. So what I'd like to do now is begin to wrap up, and we're going to have the link to your website next to the video, the recording of this. We're recording this, and it's going to end up on YouTube. I'm wondering if you could just quickly share when you introduce the Makey Makey to someone who works in your field, what is it that you try to help them understand about the Makey Makey? Because when Liam and I, when we talk to educators, typically we look through the education lens. You know, you're looking at it through the lens of sort of hackcess, right? And what I'm curious as to how people who work in your field, when they first find out about the Makey Makey, what is it that you're trying to help them understand? Hold on, wait a second. I want to make sure that you're. I can't. Let's see.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, now we can hear you.
Okay, I feel like that little commercial. The most important thing to educators, and so I'm going to speak just really quickly about speech-language pathologists specifically, because there's a big fear not just of tools like Makey Makey, but also of things like augmentative communication in our field. And so my sort of go-to line, which I think is very true, is that good intervention with assistive technology for language, it's just good language intervention. It's just the same thing that you've always been doing. It just is a different tool, right? And that's true of education also. You know, they say that best practices for special education are best practices for education generally. So it's pretty quick. You know, you guys have done a good job, I think, of making videos that sort of capture, you know, how easy and how creative it can be. You know, I know that's something that's still growing, and I think interviews like this are going to help as well. But with a new educator, I'll often show them what you know, just what's possible with this. Or even 2 years ago, I was at an autism walk, and we had a situation where I sort of had grounded myself, and we had Flappy. Maybe this was a year ago. Whenever Flappy Bird was a thing, and so kids were able to come up and whack me on the head to make the bird flap. You know, it's fun, just a gimmick, and it sort of got them to do some physical interaction. And you know, I think I talked to more educators there about the tool than I did actually interact with kids, because everyone was saying like, "Oh my gosh, you know, we've never seen him touch another adult, or you know, come up and try to engage in that way." I know I mentioned my colleague Rachel Brooks a little bit ago, but I know she did a whatever those, is it GoFundMe, the classroom funding campaigns, and she purchased a lot of Makey Makeys through that and has been using them in her work. So. I think once people see it as just another tool that they can sort of put in their kit in the service of kids, there's very little barrier to actually getting it used. I think the main thing is just making sure people know about it, making sure people see some real clear ideas of how to use it, and some of that is going to be driven from the bottom up, right? So it's going to be parents, and it's going to be siblings and other people that get interested, and then sort of inform educators.
Awesome. Well, it's we're getting close to the end here. Liam, do we have anything that we have missed or a question out there?
Sorry, guys. Let me just refresh the feed. People have been just like commenting and saying, "Hey, we might have another hangout lined up," but no big questions that have come in through Twitter yet.
Okay.
Well, feel free to, anyone out there, feel free to contact me, and of course, you two see me as a resource. I know as I've been sitting here, my phone has been blowing up, so maybe people are emailing me. Who knows? I'm really proud and thankful of everything that that you guys have done, and that also that educators out there are doing, and I can't wait to see what the next year brings.
Yeah. Well, like you said, these are exciting times where one of the teachers that I worked with said, "Wait a second, for $50 I can buy this Makey Makey, and I can attach it to a pie pan, and that's going to replace a $150 button that breaks." She had like 3 of those Big Macs that were broken. Yep. And her response was, "How come this isn't in my catalog? How come I didn't know about this?" So there's a lot of room out there, I think, still for people to recognize that there are simple solutions. This is one of many, right? But I think that when people see some of the work that you're doing and head over to your website and see that it looks like rocket science, it looks like magic. And I mean, sort of the Makey Makey to me still is magical, mostly because of where one simple idea you can go so far with it. But it is absolutely doable. That's what I really want people to get, is that, yeah, Lucas is a brilliant guy, and it's in a very short period of time you can be building real solutions for people that will change their life.
Right. Exactly. Perfect.
Well, Liam, I think we're about done, and we should. Lucas, tell us again one more time your website for your company.
Sure, it's www. So do the HTTP : Remember that LanguageCraft.org is my company. Please feel free to contact me for any reason, and I'm always happy to help with, the more complicated or challenging the situation, the happier I am to help. So, for any reason, and thanks for having me today, guys. This was great.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. And oops, sorry, Tom, you unmuted yourself, and then I muted you again, trying to unmute you. I'll let you handle it.
All right. Well, thank you. So, Liam, I know that we have more interviews coming. Our goal again is to do one a month, and so for all of our listeners out there, if you know somebody who is doing really cool stuff with the Makey Makey, and also just has insights that can help the broader education community, and when we talk about education, it's not just traditional classroom education, but also all the education that takes place outside of the classroom. That we're interested in talking with people in those arenas as well. Sure. So more stuff is coming. We're going to announce our next interviewee. Next month is going to be a cool surprise. I will just leave it at that. How about that? Did I do it? Yeah, that's right. So, Lucas, we'll look forward to seeing you further down the line.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye. Bye, everybody.